Sometimes dreams do, in fact, come true. But in the case of the Florida Panthers and hockey in South Florida, it happened a second time. Congratulations, South Florida. The Florida Panthers are back-to-back Stanley Cup champions.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Wednesday, June 18th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News. You can follow me on X at BaldoMan12. And joining me on this edition of the show is Jacob Winans for another edition of Winans Wednesday here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get up to $200 when your first $5 bet wins, and you could do that all on FanDuel. So the Florida Panthers defeat the Edmonton Oilers by a final score of 5-1 in Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Final to clinch their second straight Stanley Cup championship, and the first team since the late 80s Edmonton Oilers to clinch on home ice, the first team to clinch in back-to-back years since the Tampa Bay Lightning, and the first team to clinch in back-to-back 82-game seasons since the Pittsburgh Penguins in 2016 and 2017. And Jacob, wow. What an incredible ride for the Florida Panthers. As if you can't tell by watching this on YouTube, I'm here at Amerant Bank Arena as the background as the Florida Panthers celebrated the championship. Welcome to the show. And it was an absolute dominant performance by the Florida Panthers. 2-0 after the first period. Goals by Sam Reinhart and Matthew Tkachuk. Sam Reinhart scored 4 times, including 2 empty netters, and it really just came down to the Panthers just being the anaconda and squeezing the life out of Edmonton and them having nothing left.
Yeah, I mean, that was classic Florida Panthers hockey right there, beginning to end. They've been dominant in first periods in this series. Tonight was no different, and then just the stranglehold on defense. I've never seen Connor McDavid struggle just to create some breathing room and space the way he did in the past 2 games, but especially tonight. They came with the perfect tempo, the perfect pressure, the perfect aggressiveness needed for a closeout game. It was perfect hockey beginning to end.
No doubt. And this day for the Florida Panthers all started with, it started for me just going to the rink for morning skate with a lot of confidence. And the confidence really started right before Game 5 for me. When you talk about the goalie change, despite the comebacks in Games 1 and Game 4, and then just maybe a little bit of gamesmanship that Carter Verhaeghe played with being on the ice on the other rink at the SeatGeek rink in Fort Lauderdale, and then the Edmonton Oilers staffers like complaining that he's there when them wanting to get on the ice earlier. But how the Florida Panthers continue to protect the blue line right there and in the neutral zone. The first goal, a poor pass by Matthias Ekholm, and then a great individual effort by Sam Reinhart to get around Evan Bouchard. And then instead of Ekholm using body, he uses stick and then beating Stuart Skinner on the far side. And then the second one for the Panthers, Anton Lundell denies his own entry, and then Eetu Luostarinen finds Matthew Tkachuk, and then he scores with a screen in front. And 13-4 in the first period of this series. The Panthers had a lead in every single game. My goodness. And it was contributions from everyone. For the Panthers in this series, they're the second team to have 3 players to score 5 goals in a series. The second team. And there's so many comparisons to the Florida Panthers team to the 80s when it comes to the Oilers, the Islanders, and what the Panthers have been able to do as far as like the true throwback team. And the fact that they scored 90 plus goals in a playoff run as a team that's known for tough defense, quick breakout passes, heavy forecheck. My goodness, was it continue like the depth of the Panthers? My goodness, up and down the lineup. It was like there's this one song by Tenacious D called Beasel Boss. It's where Dave Grohl says, "I am complete." The Panthers were absolutely complete in this one.
Yeah, if you look at the lineup, it's a team without weakness, and I don't think you can really put any team up against this Panthers roster and expect them to win a 7-game series. I mean, Edmonton's a fantastic team, and we know what it looks like when a team is motivated after a Stanley Cup Final loss and they come back and they're hungry to try to win it. That was the Panthers last year, and that should tell you everything you need to know about what this year's Panthers team was. Because Edmonton had that, and the Panthers still found a way and beat them more handedly and quicker than they did last year. The stat that stood out the most to me from this series is the fact that the Panthers broke an NHL record for most time led or most time leading in a Stanley Cup Final. I mean,
255.
The fact that it went to 6 games is crazy enough. But again, it was very similar to, if you look back to the conference final last year against New York, against the Rangers, Panthers really dominated that series beginning to end. It went to 6, but both Ranger wins were overtime wins that were somewhat fluky. I think it was really similar situation here. The Oilers had a couple overtime wins, made the series a little bit artificially closer than it actually was. But overall, this was the Panthers brand on display for an entire series. And I think over the course of the playoffs, the defense first mentality was there. But the depth on offense, I don't really think I've ever seen anything like it. I would put this team up against any team over the last 20 to 25 years. And I think this team would win a series against anybody. It was really, really a team without weakness. Credit to the staff keeping everybody healthy and recovery and all of that, because the Panthers also did a great job of staying healthy throughout this run. Didn't really have to eat into their depth too much. They had a couple of games missed with suspension, a couple of games missed with injury, if you think about Reinhart, for example. But the depth on this team to fight through those things and really not lose a beat the entire time, I thought it was remarkable. It was as dominant a playoff run as you're going to see.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because when we stepped on the ice after the game, after the Stanley Cup was skated around, I asked AJ Greer about how tough it was to play the first 2 games of the final and to finally for him to get back into game 3. And he said it was emotional. That's for him to use that. I'm just like, okay, I'm just thinking, okay, you want to still help your team win. You know that your team at least help you, give you a chance to at least go back to Sunrise tied 1-1, but the hunger, the desire to get back into the mix, and whenever you even if it's not to the fault of his own getting hurt, which we saw at the end of the Carolina series in Game 5. I mean, he tried going into the third period, took a shift, and then didn't return after that. So just the fact that the grit, the will to win, and I mean, you mentioned the injuries to Reinhart. I mean, Brad Marchand, even when he got traded to Florida, he wasn't healthy to begin, and the fact that they made that trade with the conditions that they put, with 50% played of playoff games, in order for that condition to be a second to a first, and for the Panthers to make the conference final. Everything just fell into place on just the amount of risk versus the reward. And obviously we're talking about a Stanley Cup championship, so the reward is so big. And I mean, I'm looking right now at that 2024 banner, and I'm just thinking, wow, they get to add another one. So the whole banners fly forever. I mean, it's such a cliche statement, but my goodness, I'm sure Bill Zito is like is like looking like Dr. Evil in Austin Powers whenever he's thinking about the amount of trades he's been able to pull off.
Yeah, absolute masterclass of a trade deadline. When you look back at this season, and when we talk about this for years to come, arguably the best trade deadline in the history of the NHL. I don't think you could have hit any more of a home run than Bill Zito did at this year's trade deadline. You get Seth Jones. Of course, you mortgage a little bit of the future, and you get Seth Jones, but you get him. You get him with term left on the deal. You get some of that contract retained, and now he goes from a really disappointing tenure in Chicago to looking like he's going to be a mainstay for the Panthers for the next 5 years, and like he can be a number 1D. I think that alone was a great trade. But then Brad Marchand, you get him for pennies. No one's going to think about that first round pick, the second that turned to a first. It's never going to matter because they got a Stanley Cup out of it, and you don't win this Stanley Cup without Brad Marchand. A lot of times you get those trade deadline pieces that are contributors, but they play their role, they play their part, but it's not necessarily like the success or failure of the team rides on those trade deadline guys. Brad Marchand, the Panthers don't win this Stanley Cup without him. You think about what he does in the Toronto series, completely turning that series with the overtime goal when it easily could have been 3-0 Toronto in that series. And then the way he performed in Game 7. Then you think about Game 2 against the Oilers, double overtime. Panthers are looking for a hero, trying to get the series even and get it back home. Brad Marchand comes up huge. And then the way he played in Game 5 of this series, the pivotal game, was the best player on the ice. They don't win that cup without Brad Marchand, and Bill Zito continues to win with his trades. The deadline, the offseason trades, the big swings, the Tkachuk trade, the Bennett trade. I mean,
Forsling on waivers, which
Forsling on waivers, tonight. Which, yeah, absolutely. He had a fantastic series all around. There's nothing really negative you can say about Bill Zito and his trade acumen, and a couple that we don't even talk about, but like Brandon Montour, for example. Big risk when they get him. He was statistically the worst defenseman in hockey when they decided to give up a pick for him. Key part of last year's Stanley Cup Final team. So Bill Zito continues to make this team an absolute juggernaut, and he continues to do it through the trade market. It's at a point now, if you're an opposing GM and you get a call from Bill Zito about a trade, don't even pick up the phone because you're about to get fleeced and you're going to help the Panthers win a cup.
And speaking of one of the trades that Bill Zito made, which one of the trade deadline acquisitions was still from a few years ago, but one of them that he made was definitely a home run. And we are going to talk about a Conn Smythe winner, about one of his acquisitions where Sam Bennett is the Conn Smythe winner. And we're also going to discuss the handing of the cup after Aleksander Barkov lifted it after their Stanley Cup victory. We're going to discuss that more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot, breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off, live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. And I am aiming for something along the lines of 20-plus points from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in Game 6 of the NBA Final for the Oklahoma City Thunder to possibly win it in 6 games on the road in Indianapolis against the Pacers. So you could get a $200 bonus when you place your first $5 bet. New to FanDuel, it's a perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel and place your $5 bet. If it wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Segment 2 here on this Wednesday, June 18th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. Armando Velez with Jacob Winans, and also wanted to give a special shout out to our producer for tonight's show, Eddie Garcia of Locked On LA Kings, pressing all the buttons. I just get to talk tonight as I am doing this from my phone and with my phone mic here from Amerant Bank Arena after the Florida Panthers defeated the Edmonton Oilers by a final score of 5-1 in Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Final. So, Conn Smythe winner. Can't say I'm surprised. There was a little bit of a seed of doubt that Sam Bennett, that it was going to go to Brad Marchand based on the fact that 7 of his 10 goals, were go-ahead goals, and the fact of how impactful he is. Yes, they don't win the Stanley Cup without Brad Marchand, but Sam Bennett, 15 goals, which he's in the echelon of Sidney Crosby scoring 15 goals in a postseason, Alexander Ovechkin scoring 15 goals, and doing it in a contract year for Sam Bennett. And the fact is, now we can talk about this a little bit. There's that report out there now that it's been for a few days now of the Florida Panthers possibly agreeing to an 8x8 for Sam Bennett. And I wanted to park that until after the series. So now when you look at Sam Bennett and how successful he's been, playoff Sam, Panthers trade 2 second-round picks for him in order to get him here. And the fact that how he performs in the postseason, even though he had a career high of 50, you'll never see him possibly be a point-per-game player. But coming up big when it matters most and doing it over and over again. Sam Bennett, 15 goals. Sam Reinhart with the great game tonight with the 4 goals. I mean, what can you say? Hey, I made this joke many times. Does Bill Zito like green eggs and ham?
Yeah, it's becoming a kind of a trend now. If your name is Sam and you're in a contract year, you're about to do some crazy stuff. Sam Reinhart last year in his contract year absolutely was the Panthers' saving grace and won them the cup with the Stanley Cup winning goal. Had 57 goals in the regular season in his contract year. And then Sam Bennett this year, career high in points, absolute monster on both ends of the ice. The physicality, the ability to put himself in front of the net and get to all the hard areas, and then he's rewarded with 15 goals. But it wasn't like he was scoring them in one single way. He was scoring in transition, scoring the dirty ones, the greasy ones. He was scoring from range. I mean, he was doing literally everything, scoring in every possible way in the postseason. And I think he showed his versatility there, but also just the way he agitates everybody. I mean, there was not a single time or not a single series this entire postseason where Sam Bennett wasn't in the middle of the conversation. And that's exactly where he likes to be. He irritates the hell out of everybody. He's a pest. He's annoying. He plays on the edge. He can be dirty sometimes, but you can't argue that he's a winner. He is absolutely a winner. You pay winning players. If it's 8x8, it's 8x8. Statistically, maybe the points throughout a season aren't going to add up to what an $8 million player should be getting. But that's not really where his value lies. His value lies in the postseason. And you have the luxury of paying a guy a little bit more, maybe a slight overpay statistically for a guy like Sam Bennett. When you have Barkov and you have Anton Lundell, it's such a bargain behind him. At the end of the day, you're going to have the deepest center group in the NHL for however long those 3 are here. So I'm if that's what it is, that's what it is, and I'm perfectly happy with that. He's more than earned it.
You win down the middle. That's the mantra. And to think, and I'm allowed to change my tune. Prior to the season, I was thinking Anton Lundell has to graduate to 2C. But this was before this kind of postseason run for Sam Bennett. And Sam Bennett, I mean, all the drama that happened in between the Leaf series with bumping into Anthony Stolarz as well, and doing it in another series where he crashed in the net to Freddie Anderson. And then there was also that conversation because it's Sam Bennett, people are going to think that he's doing this intentionally. And it's, if he resigns, I mean, man, is that gonna, the fact that the term that Ryan Lomberg used last year, together forever after this one, it's more than just forever in as far as legacy and names on the cup, but just the fact that they get to wake up, go to the rink and see their friends over and over again. They get to play in front of the same crowd. They get to go into the same locker room. They don't have to worry about moving expenses. I know fans don't really think about those type of things, but it's a very comfortable position for Sam Bennett if he does re-sign. And hey, the state income tax. Hey, I mean, you can make a little more, but hey, that's but with the rise in cap, there's no excuse anymore. But and teams should try to find a way to at least try to catch up at least to the Panthers. But let's go to the order that the cup was handed out to. I'm not going to go through every single name, but Aleksander Barkov, obviously as the captain, is the first guy to get the cup and lift it once again. A little bit different this time. First, he started going to the actual team, and the team crowded around him. A little different. Also a little different this year when the Panthers won was the fact that Go Cats Go didn't play immediately. It took a little bit for the arena to play it. So a little different. I mean, I played Game 7 of last year multiple times, so little things that I've noticed there. But after Barkov met with the team, skated around, I was thinking Schmidt or Jones. One of those two. And it was Nate Schmidt. And this was the order of the new guys. I'm not going to go through the rest. Schmidt, Jones, Tomas Nosek, Vitek Vanacek, AJ Greer, Jesper Boquist, Mackie Semiskevich, Uwe Spilinskis, Jacob Megna, Evan Cormier, and then it went to Bobby, and then the rest of the guys who were there. Such class. Such that in itself of the Panthers winning the cup just tells everything about the culture. And Barkov setting the tone, which Barkov, by the way, that shift for the third goal for Sam Reinhart, oh my goodness, that was an absolute forechecking clinic where Barkov had a chance where he ran out of real estate. They continued with it. Kulak was a little bit above the zone. Shot was saved, and then Barkov was able to bounce it off Sam Reinhart for the second goal. Just he showed up, and also he did it with class after they won.
I mean, Barkov's game tonight was possibly some of the best hockey I've ever seen him play, and really the last two games. I know McDavid got the goal in Game 5, but that was the Barkov masterclass in both of these last two games. Just the Selke caliber defense on full display. The offense was there. Sam Reinhart, like we mentioned earlier, almost backdoored himself into the Conn Smythe conversation with a massive game tonight with 4 goals. But Barkov played a huge part in his success tonight. So he was tremendous. But the cup order that we saw tonight really stood out to me. I thought for sure, Schmidt or Jones was going to get it first. Veterans who haven't had a chance to win it yet, especially Schmidt, who was pretty open about the fact that coming into this season, he was considering that this is near the end of his career. He doesn't know how many years he has left to play, if any, after this season. And everyone kind of knew that. So the fact that he gets it first after Barkov meant a lot. Seth Jones, more than deserving, and then kind of going down the line from there. But the one that stood out to me the most, Evan Cormier. No one talks about that, but he's the third goalie, the practice goalie right now. He wouldn't be here with the team if the Checkers weren't in the Calder Cup final themselves. But obviously the Checkers have Kaapo Kähkönen and who's backing him up? We got Appleby and Cooper Black down there, and
Cooper Black.
Cooper Black is currently backing him up. But the Checkers. We would have the Checkers goalies here if not for the fact that they're in their own final. So Evan Cormier being with the team is really cool, and the fact that he got to lift the cup and be part of the passing of the cup throughout the roster. It speaks to the fact that the Panthers they always preach that every guy is important. Every guy has a role. Everyone in that locker room matters, whether they're playing or not. And sometimes you can just think of that like, oh, that's just words. That's just lip service. That's just what Paul Maurice is saying. It's empty. But when you actually see it, you have the visual. You see that on display with the cup order. They really do mean that. It's not something that they just talk about. Every single guy in that room is valued the same, and it means something to everybody. And everyone appreciates and has respect for every single person in that room. And I thought that was on display in the order that the cup was passed around.
And just whenever you think about the winning puck to put on the board, I mean, giving it to Vitek Vanacek in the recent game, and then even last year when the series shifted from Florida to Edmonton, Matthew Tkachuk giving it to one of the training staffs. I think it was the training staff because of how long of a day they had from traveling from city to city. So it just speaks on just how much they care about each other, and it's a very family first type of organization as well. I mean, I'm in disbelief for when it comes to it, because I mean, this franchise was in the bleeper. Gonna use a family friendly word here. They were in the bleeper for the longest time, and Vinny Viola purchasing it in 2014, and then the investment in the team analytics, a very analytics heavy based teams. Shout out to Sadi Metna for for running the great analytics department for the Florida Panthers here, and just making and informing Bill Zito of just what he needs to get done in order to bring a guy in, and what the guys can bring to the table. So just outstanding, first class organization, the Florida Panthers. Shout out to them. Shout out to everyone involved: Bill Zito, Vinny Viola, Matthew Caldwell, Paul Maurice, everyone. So yeah, I'm just very happy for all the people involved, because I even bumped into his son Jake Maurice today, and I gave him a hug. I just said congratulations. You it well deserved. But we're going to transition over to segment number 3, where we are going to discuss the D word when it comes to the Florida Panthers. Shall we dare talk about that D word, and also compare to what the Florida Panthers have done in the South Florida sports landscape? We're going to discuss that more next year on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Segment 3 here on this Wednesday, June 18th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. Armando Velez here with Jacob Winans here on another edition of Winans Wednesday. And once again, special shout out to our producer for tonight's show, Eddie Garcia of Locked On LA Kings, out on the West Coast, pressing all the buttons for us on the show tonight as the Florida Panthers defeat the Edmonton Oilers by a final score of 5-1 in Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Final to clinch their second straight title. And Jacob, before Game 6 last night, just looking at the definition of what Dynasty is, there's not really a set definition of you have to win 3 Stanley Cups in a row, or necessarily the 3 cups in 6 years like the Chicago Blackhawks did in the early 2010s. But when I just went on Google and decided to look up Dynasty, what it truly means, and when it comes to what the search engine showed me, it was a period of dominance. It obviously there has to be at least a championship, maybe 2, but it never says 3 in there when it comes to when I looked it up. I just wanted to give some context of the way I'm thinking when it comes to Florida Panthers and Dynasty. And the fact is, we spoke about the window that the Panthers are in. Most of their core is locked up until 2030. But you think about the Panthers kicking the door once they won that series in Washington in 2022. 4 straight second-round appearances, 3 straight Stanley Cup Finals. And to think that, I mean, once again, looking at these banners, half banners that we're going to see by opening night next season are going to be in this 4-year run for the Panthers. And you think about how the Panthers have done it with just a commitment to excellence, great leadership. And the fact that it's still going to be a certain percentage of turnover from one year to the next. But I'm very comfortable in saying Dynasty, the Florida Panthers, the mid-2020s, the era belongs to them.
And I don't think that's an exaggeration at all. Until proven otherwise, this is the best team in hockey. This is the best run franchise in hockey. We got the best GM in hockey. They've got the best coach to player buy-in in hockey. And I think they've got the most established system right now in hockey. And it's going to be hard for anyone to dethrone them because it's coming at a really great time where the cap is going up. A report came out today that the cap is expected to go up even higher than they originally projected. You've got guys locked in long term on team friendly deals. You've got the ability to lock in more. I mean, it's really a perfect storm of they got good at the right time. They found the perfect match between GM, coach, down to the players. This could go for a long time. I'm not saying they're going to win a Stanley Cup next year. I'm not saying they're going to win a Stanley Cup every year. But you know, they've played a lot of hockey, and I'm sure they're going to slow down at some point. But the Cup window is wide open, and it's going to stay wide open for the next several years. And right now, 3 years in a row, and they've won so much in the last 3 years, and doing it different ways. I mean, getting in as the wild card team and going all the way, knocking off the best regular season team in the history of the sport, back-to-back Stanley Cup wins, a President's Trophy right before this all started to kind of kick this whole thing off. Over the last 4 years, you're talking President's Trophy, 3 Eastern Conference titles, 2 Stanley Cups, 3 Stanley Cup appearances. That is a dynasty. That is a ton of hardware right there. And in that time, you've got a couple Selke trophies. You got some individual awards. You've got a Sam Bennett Conn Smythe, first Florida Panther in history to win a Conn Smythe, by the way.
Yes.
There's a lot of heart. There's a lot of silverware in there. The 2 Stanley Cups are, of course, the crown jewels, but it's not just the 2 Stanley Cup wins the past 2 years. They've done a ton of winning. They've really dominated the East for the last 3 seasons. No one's really gotten close. You really can't argue. You can't argue with it. If the Panthers want to be called a dynasty, we're there. I don't know what else you can ask for.
And the first team to win a championship, not having home ice throughout the entire postseason since the 2012 LA Kings. 13 years separated that. I know the Oilers also didn't have home ice until the Stanley Cup Final for them. But the fact that they didn't worry about it at all, they worried health is wealth in real life and when you're talking about the Florida Panthers and how they pace themselves. You think about 4 nations. I had my doubts at times of whether the Panthers were going to do it. But I remember I had more confidence when the Panthers beat it at the buzzer for the trade deadline when Brad Marchand was coming. I'm like, oh, they mean serious business. And going to go back to one of the podcasts I did with Frank Fort earlier in the final, that anything for the Panthers here was just gravy. And I see it as gravy, even if they didn't win. But now it's even more of what the Panthers could become. And to think that they're going to have the Olympics next year, the fact that, I mean, short and off season as well. We still need to wonder what's going to happen with Matthew Tkachuk if something is going to happen as far as off season surgery for how him coming back after the 4 nations and also although he scored, I mean, he was almost a point per game player despite being hobbled. Wow, what a postseason for him. Even though he didn't get a good amount of the headlines. So let's see if there's anything that comes out after the fact of the Panthers celebrating the Stanley Cup. But one last thing before we get out of here. That's now the Florida Panthers in 2024 and 2025 winning their back-to-back championships are now the 3rd South Florida sports team to win back-to-back championships. The Dolphins of the early 70s, the Miami Heat in the Big 3 era, LeBron, Wade, and Bosh in the early 2010s, and now this Florida Panthers team. And also, let me mention Roberto Luongo banging the drum again and the passion that he pumped up the crowd with, starting it off with a bang, and the Florida Panthers just having the will to find a way to get this done and just to leave no doubt. And I thought that the Panthers cutting it close and winning these tight games. I mean, I'm not at the point where I'm going to say which one is my favorite championship, But if I'm going to talk about which team was actually better, this one is way better by a country mile, no doubt.
I would agree with that. I think especially this year, just everything that Edmonton had going for them, and the way they came into this series, and then just to pick them for the Panthers to pick themselves up off the mat after absolutely heartbreaking game one. I mean, no sec do the way that unfolded with the puck out of play over the glass and the power play goal after playing really really well to start that game and blowing the lead. It felt at times like they were fighting fate, especially in game two when Corey Perry scores and ties it and sends it to overtime when it looked like they had a win in the bag. And that nothing seemed to derail this team or knock them off track. And that they had a championship mentality the entire way. And I don't think there's ever been a team that I've seen in my life that has the ability to take those obstacles and take those punches and sometimes literally take those punches and just continue going. I mean, they have an uncanny ability to bounce back from literally any adversity thrown their way and continue to win. And I think that you can't teach that.
No way.
It's a cultural thing, and the team has a culture that is unmatched right now. It's special. It's really special. And I know we talk about the big three Heat era. We're both huge Heat fans. Those championships seemed almost guaranteed at times. It felt like that team was just talent-wise so much farther ahead of everyone else that there was no way they weren't going to win championships. At times it felt like those teams should have maybe underachieved, or they did underachieve a little bit at times where they should have won more championships with that group. This is very different. This is very different with what the Panthers have right now because they continue to, in hockey, it's unheard of to do what they're doing right now. There's the whole super team thing doesn't really exist in hockey. This isn't a team that was built by giant free agent spending and putting together a bunch of whales on one team. It's very, very different what they've done. They've built something that's built to last, but it's a very, very special winning culture that they have. And I think this has quickly become the greatest South Florida sports dynasty we've had.
No doubt. And who knows, we might be a little prisoner of the moment here, but hey, who cares? We're on cloud nine when it comes to the Florida Panthers winning this championship once again, and just having the South Florida crowd in so much pandemonium from witnessing it again on home ice, and really how you said it for the Panthers and how they're able to just mentally bounce back. I mean, it's kind of like maybe like a stoic nature that they have in them. And I mean, you talk to Bobrovsky every day, even during the regular season after games, and you can't tell sometimes whether he wins or loses, similar to Carey Price for the Montreal Canadiens. You can't tell. And that's just staying focused on the task at hand. And I love seeing Sergei Bobrovsky smile after winning because we don't see that side of him often. So that I'm just happy for him. What a signing by Dale Talon. I know he's not the general manager, but kudos to Dale Talon for making that risk what was seen as a bad contract for the longest time, at least the first 3 years, and now 2 championships under that contract. So very, very happy for Bob, and outstanding game for him outside of the garbage time goal. But hey, he's a 2-time Stanley Cup champion and a Hall of Famer. So Jacob, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Another successful Winans Wednesday, a championship edition of Winans Wednesday. Thankful for you to have joined me here. We're about to wrap up here at Amerant Bank Arena, and I'm about to celebrate. I'm going to celebrate. I'm heading to the infield, so right across the arena, so with my fellow reporters. So I can't wait to go celebrate with them. And thank you so much once again for joining me. Tell everybody where they can follow you online.
Yep, you can follow me on X at Jacob Winans 8. Thank you always for having me. Another successful season, and we're going to kick off our second consecutive championship summer. Appreciate you, Eddie, hanging on with us and producing behind the scenes out there in California. I cannot celebrate anymore tonight. I will be heading to California at 8 a.m. in about 5 hours. So I've got a long travel day ahead of me tomorrow, but I appreciate you, both of you guys, staying up late tonight. It's well worth it.
Yeah, and we're wrapping this up at 2:35 in the morning, and I'll be up all night for sure. So shout out to the Florida Panthers, back-to-back Stanley Cup champions. Thank you so much, Jacob, once again. And for the final time in this season for the Florida Panthers, if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on Locked On NHL Network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, Locked On NHL Prospects, and Locked On NHL Game Night. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So Armando Velez with Jacob Winans and Eddie Garcia. And you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.